In a dimly lit room, a girl is forced to pose in front of cameras, and the one coercing her to take these photos is none other than her own father. The girl's name is Iase. She attends school during the day, but at night, she becomes a human model here. In front of countless cameras, Iase has no privacy left. This job has made her the subject of gossip among her classmates. Yet even so, Iase has never resisted her father, because she needs to earn money to take care of her 5-year-old sister, but her beastly father actually wanted to exploit his young daughter for profit. Just when Iase didn't know how to escape her father's clutches, he suddenly passed away in an accident. Shota is Iase's only friend. Upon learning that she and her sister have become orphans, he wants to comfort her, but doesn't know where to start. Feeling disheartened, Shota returns to his secret base, only to find billowing smoke coming from his room. When the smoke clears, he discovers a silver-haired girl in a postman's attire in his room, accompanied by a talking cane. The girl, named Fumika, claims to be there to deliver a letter, but first needs to confirm if Shota is Iase's boyfriend. In this world, there exists a chance after death to write unsaid words from life onto a letter, which is then delivered to the living by a special messenger of the underworld. Known as Shigofumi, Fumika embodies this role as the messenger of the underworld, assisted by a talking cane named Kanaka. However, Fumika faces a dilemma this time, because Shota is not Iase's boyfriend. According to Iase's father's request, this letter must be delivered to Iase's boyfriend. Shota is the only resident of this unfinished building. His biggest dream is to build a rocket, but each attempt ends in failure. Everyone mocks him until one day when Shota meets Iase. Iase doesn't ridicule him. Instead, she truly believes that Shota can build a rocket, so the two people isolated by their classmates quickly became good friends. Iase often comes to the rooftop to help. She and Shota calculate formulas and modify equipment. It seems that building a rocket has also become her dream. Watching Iase's innocent smile, Shota silently falls in love with her. However, what he doesn't know is the immense pain hidden behind that smile in Iase's heart. Therefore, naturally, he wouldn't think about what this Shigofumi from Iase's father represents. Naive Shota believes it to be Iase's father's final wish, but he cannot receive this letter as Iase's boyfriend. So, he resolves to muster the courage, and immediately calls Iase to confess his feelings. However, Iase is preoccupied with her father's funeral, and hastily hangs up the phone. Shota's rocket is about to be successfully developed, and he decides to focus on completing it quickly. When the time comes, he plans to use this opportunity to confess his love to Iase. Shota tirelessly works on the rocket day and night, while Fumika chooses to stay, waiting for Shota and Iase to officially become a couple. When that happens, she can formally hand over the letter to Shota. Finally, on that day, Shota, who had never been supported by anyone, actually succeeded in building a rocket. Shota wanted to share this good news with Iase, but at that moment, he noticed the letter that Fumika had accidentally left behind. Driven by curiosity, he read all the contents of the letter. Shota is shocked to discover that this letter is not a farewell message at all, but rather a letter from Iase's father accusing her of killing him. He wants Iase's boyfriend to help him expose Iase. Shota was unaware of what Iase had been through, but he couldn't bring himself to believe that Iase would commit murder. However, Fumika told him that the dead do not lie. So, Shota rushed to Iase's house, wanting to get everything clear. Yet, when he saw Iase's usual smile, all his doubts dissipated. He firmly believed that Iase would never take a life, so Shota talked to her about the completion of the rocket. He hoped that Iase could witness the rocket launch with him, and took the opportunity to express his love. Just then, Fumika suddenly appeared and interrupted them. Shota immediately stood in front of Iase, determined to protect the girl he liked. However, Iase behind him suddenly raised a dagger and stabbed towards him. In this way, Shota died at the hands of the person he was wholeheartedly trying to protect. At this moment, Iase wanted to kill Fumika as well, but Fumika vanished into thin air before her eyes. Iase, now consumed by madness, had long been tormented and no longer trusted anyone. Despite knowing that Shota liked her, she couldn't be sure if he would expose her. If she ended up in prison, her young sister would be left with no one to care for her. Initially, she killed her father to protect her sister, and today was no different, so she chose the most extreme way to deal with it. Iase is out in the countryside trying desperately to destroy the body, consumed by hatred towards her father, which blinded her completely, with no other choice but to protect her sister. However, soon Shota's body was discovered by someone. Iase then chose to flee. She cut her long hair, disguised herself as a man, and boarded a train to another city. However, at that moment, Fumika found her and handed her a letter. The sender was Shota. Iase thought Fumika was trying to stop her, but Fumika said that the world's sins had nothing to do with her. Her task was simply to deliver the letter to its intended recipient. After speaking, Fumika vanished into thin air. As the train started moving, Iase ran off at the last second. It turned out that in the letter, Shota had not a single word of blame or resentment towards Iase. Instead, it was filled with self-blame. Shota regretted being too focused on rocket research and not understanding the pain Iase had gone through. The only regret in Shota's heart was not being able to watch the rocket he built ascend with Iase. The gentler Shota was in the letter, the more agony Iase felt. She ran all the way towards the abandoned building filled with memories between them, the only place where she had ever felt warmth in her life. When Iase saw the rocket named after her, she could no longer control herself. Bursting into tears, following Shota's recorded handwriting, she prepared to complete the rocket launch task alone. But during the countdown to the rocket launch, the police found her. Iase, at this moment, no longer resisted. She only hoped to fulfill Shota's final wish. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew the canvas onto the top of the rocket. Iase quickly pulled out a knife and rushed to cut the ropes. However, her actions led another police officer to mistakenly think she was attacking. While Iase cut the ropes, a bullet struck her chest. As the rocket launch countdown ended, the rocket bearing the names of Shota and Iase finally soared into the sky. Shortly after, Iase's sister was sent to an orphanage. Fumika also found her and brought a letter filled with longing and blessings. At every place where a life fades away, Fumika always holds a talking staff, descending gracefully from the void above. The letters she delivers contain various emotions like longing, regret, and resentment, but no matter what they convey, they are the final words left behind by those departing this world. This boy named Koichi never wears pants to class every day. It's not because he's poor, but because his classmates don't allow it. And every time class is over, Koichi's backpack gets snatched away and becomes the class's communal trash bin. Whenever this happens, Koichi can only helplessly bow his head. He dares not tell the teacher, nor ask his parents for help. The teacher is well aware of everything. Whenever it's time for class, the teacher always calls Koichi to the front to answer questions, forcing him, without pants, to embarrass himself in front of the whole class. Koichi has no friends. His only solace is the internet. He goes by the online alias Half-Dead Man, signifying someone who is half dead. Every day, he shares his experiences online, drawing a large crowd of onlookers, including his classmate Morishita. Morishita's favorite pastime is checking out the comments about Koichi. Many online users advise Koichi to speak to the teacher. Whenever Morishita reads such comments, he can't help but mock them, thinking they must be self-righteous parents. Gradually, the bullying Koichi faces at school becomes more severe. His posts attract more attention, but it doesn't change anything, because most online followers are just spectators. As part of this group, Morishita eventually realizes that this individual with the alias Half-Dead Man seems to be his classmate. So on this day, when Morishita saw Koichi barefoot, searching in the bushes for his lost shoes, he grew curious. He asked Koichi if he was Half-Dead Man. Hearing his online alias being called out, Koichi thought Morishita had come to help him. Koichi quickly knelt down and pleaded with Morishita for assistance, expressing that he could no longer bear it all. But Morishita believed that Koichi was bullied because he was too soft. He said he couldn't help him and chose to leave. However, before he could get far, he was intercepted by bullies. They had seen Morishita talking to Koichi, and mistakenly thought Morishita was Koichi's friend, deciding to target Morishita for bullying as well. Seeing this, Morishita hurriedly explained that he had no connection with Koichi, but the bullies demanded that he prove it through actions. That same evening, Koichi received a call from Morishita, who said he wanted to help. Without much thought, Koichi went to meet him. However, upon arriving at the agreed location, he found the bullies there. Soon after, Morishita emerged from behind and, to avoid being bullied, joined the bullies' ranks. They forced Koichi to walk across the steel beam of the rooftop. Koichi is too scared, and can only kneel on the ground, begging desperately. At this moment, Morishita discreetly tapped on his phone in his pocket. Soon after, the school security guards rushed over, halting the bullies, successfully rescuing Koichi. That evening back at home, Morishita opened Koichi's website and discovered a post he had made before the meeting. In the post, Koichi mentioned that a friend was willing to help him, and that he would update his followers upon his return. Seeing this, Morishita felt relieved. Despite deceiving Koichi, he indeed called the security guards to save him. But the next day, the teacher informed everyone of Koichi's death. He had committed suicide. Clearly under duress, the individuals responsible for coercing Koichi to his death showed no remorse. Rather, they scoffed at the situation. This incident quickly garnered media attention. Yet the teacher did not seek the truth, but instead warned all students not to speak out of turn. Soon, reporters began interviewing within the school. Yet Koichi's classmates acted as though nothing had happened, continuing to chat and laugh as usual. But Morishita still believed that Koichi was too weak, which led to his choice of suicide. However, he soon began to feel Koichi's pain, as the compasses now pierced his own back. Clearly, with Koichi's death, Morishita became the new target of bullying. The tactics previously used to torment Koichi were now directed at Morishita. Now, Morishita finally understood that mental torment is more painful than physical torment. So, he began to refer to himself as the half-dead man and started sharing his experiences online, hoping for someone to come to his aid. However, soon enough, Morishita faced a final game just like Koichi's. But this time the bullies were even more extreme. They demanded that Morishita walk blindfolded across the steel beam of the rooftop. However, at this moment, Fumika, dressed in a mail carrier uniform, suddenly appeared. She quickly subdued the bullies, and then handed a letter to Morishita. Fumika told him that she was the messenger of the underworld, and that the letter was from the deceased Koichi to Morishita. The contents of the letter were filled with Koichi's resentment towards Morishita. Koichi had regarded him as a savior, but Morishita had joined the bullies to torment him. Koichi had foreseen that Morishita would also become a new target of bullying. He wanted Morishita to truly experience the feeling of being bullied. After reading the letter, Morishita collapsed. He had thought he was helping Koichi, but instead, Koichi cursed him in this way. When he lifted his head again, Fumika had already disappeared. At this moment, the bullies surrounded Morishita once more and began to punch and kick him. But then, Morishita saw a screwdriver in front of him. In his despair, he seemed to glimpse a glimmer of hope. Without hesitation, he picked up the screwdriver and stabbed one of them directly. At that moment, Morishita's long-suppressed emotions were finally unleashed. The other two, frightened, fled in disarray. Meanwhile, Fumika, who had just delivered the letter, stood at a distance watching everything unfold. She was merely a messenger of the underworld, responsible for delivering Shigofumi to the designated recipients. She had no authority to interfere in the human world. Shortly after, news of Morishita's actions spread online, once again sparking heated discussions among netizens. Among them was a girl who had experienced similar hardships. But unlike Morishita, this girl finally mustered the courage to seek help from her parents. Surely, her life would take a different turn because of this. While this story may seem heavy, it reflects the harsh realities of life. Bullying in schools is a recurring issue, leaving victims not only with painful memories, but also with deep emotional scars. Let's hope that when faced with such situations, everyone can summon the courage to resist or to aid those in need, so that the cherished school days are free of regrets. Every inch of the girl's skin is covered in text, each word painstakingly carved by her biological father without any anesthesia. The girl's father continuously treats her body as a draft to organize his inspirations as a writer. The girl's name is Miku. Though she detests and fears her father's actions, she initially chose to endure them. After all, her father had once loved her deeply. Father Mikawa is a highly renowned writer whose novels possess a unique charm. Miku's mother is a beautiful actress. However, she divorced Mikawa abruptly after Miku's birth. Afterwards, Mikawa began to raise Miku alone. In Miku's memory, her father had always been very gentle and doting. However, one day without warning, Mikawa abruptly started teaching her art and locked her in his collection room. Within the dimly lit room were various firearms and cold weapons. Since Miku entered this room of weapon collections, she never saw the outside world again, not even attending kindergarten or elementary school. Miku lived every day in the shadow of her father. Especially when Mikawa saw glimpses of Miku's mother in her, he intensified his torment of Miku. While carving words on Miku's body, Mikawa would shout, "I hate you." Every time this happened, Miku would cry and say, "Daddy, I love you." She tried to use her love to bring back the once gentle father, but it proved futile. Miku's pleas had no effect on Mikawa. Miku refused to forget the love her father once showed her. But Mikawa's torment grew increasingly severe. The immense mental anguish and physical pain finally gave rise to another personality within Miku. Miku named this second personality Fumika. Whenever Miku felt despair due to the pain in her body, Fumika would appear to accompany her. In the stories told by Fumika, there are princes and princesses, along with various adorable animals. The fairy tale world described by Fumika gives Miku the courage to continue living on. One day, to everyone's surprise, Mikawa allowed Miku to attend middle school, having never ventured far from her father. Miku felt both unfamiliar and fearful in the school environment. However, she met Natsuka, a carefree girl, who was the first outsider to interact with Miku besides her father. They got along well, and Natsuka helped Miku adapt to school life quickly. Additionally, Miku encountered Takashiko, a boy who liked her. Takashiko's sudden appearance caught Miku off guard, leaving her unsure of how to react. Overwhelmed, she made the choice to leave, but just as Miku was slowly integrating into school life, her father's sudden reappearance once again plunged Miku into darkness. This time, Fumika, concerned for Miku's safety, took control of Miku's body and shot Mikawa, injuring him. However, Miku believed she had mistakenly killed her father, and she isolated herself completely. Ignoring even Fumika's words, Miku remained in this coma for a full 4 years. As her alter ego, Fumika, in order to continuously protect Miku, became the messenger of the underworld. In this world, after a person dies, they have one more chance. They can write the words they didn't get to say in life on a letter, which will then be delivered to the living by a special messenger of the underworld. This letter is known as a Shigofumi. Fumika's role is that of the messenger of the underworld. Every messenger is equipped with a talking wand as an assistant. All the messengers of the underworld who serve in this role have died once before. The appearance and bodies of the other messengers will no longer change. But Fumika is an exception. She continues to grow little by little, just like a human. As Fumika moves between the two worlds, delivering messages to the deceased, she encounters Takashiko, who had once confessed his feelings to Miku. Takashiko recognizes Fumika, mistaking her for Miku since they look identical. Takashiko wanted to clarify Fumika's identity, but Fumika chose to evade the situation. Undeterred, Takashiko seeks out Natsuka, Miku's only friend from middle school, who confirms that Miku indeed fell into a coma after shooting her father. During these 4 years, Miku has been undergoing treatment in the hospital. In contrast, her father, Mikawa, who was saved in time, has resumed a normal life. Despite being a renowned writer, Mikawa had been unable to write a single word during this time, leaving the company that relied on his work for income in a precarious position. The company decides to send Haruno as an assistant to Mikawa. By coincidence, Haruno turns out to be Natsuka's sister. Natsuka effortlessly obtained Mikawa's home address from her sister, prompting them to immediately head to Mikawa's house. Meanwhile, Fumika, entrusted by a recently deceased woman who was a fan of Mikawa, was tasked with delivering a message to him. This woman had committed suicide by jumping off a building after reading Mikawa's works. Longing for the afterlife depicted in his novels, Fumika arrived at Mikawa's residence and handed him the letter. After reading the letter, Mikawa not only felt no remorse for the woman's death but found her words repulsive. At this moment, Fumika, unable to contain herself, scolded Mikawa, calling him a beast. Mikawa, however, was not angered by Fumika's words. He even introduced her to others as his daughter. Fumika once again raised her gun towards him, but Takashiko intervened. While everyone tried to calm Fumika down, Mikawa suddenly aimed his gun directly at Fumika. Takashiko, unable to hold back any longer, rushed forward and fiercely beat Mikawa before locking him in a storage room. Meanwhile, Fumika's wounds had rapidly healed. Both Takashiko and Natsuka wanted to know what had happened 4 years ago, and why she had shot her father. Fumika didn't hide anything and revealed to them all that had transpired. She explained that she was not Miku but her alter ego. Meanwhile, while locked up, Mikawa dismantled all the bullets hidden in toys, poured out the gunpowder, and ignited it, successfully escaping. Upon hearing the explosion, Fumika rushed over. At this moment, Mikawa was selecting a weapon, preparing to eliminate them. Fumika swiftly locked Takashiko and Haruno outside. Despite Mikawa's attempts at resistance, Fumika charged at him, knocking him down with a punch. Every time Fumika thinks about the things Miku has gone through, she would have loved to tear Mikawa to pieces. In the moment before Fumika could act, Takashiko and Haruno, assisted by the talking wand, rushed in, halting her in time. The talking wand repeatedly reminded Fumika that as the messenger of the underworld, shooting someone would severely disrupt the balance of both worlds, and both worlds would not forgive her. However, Fumika, consumed by her desire to eliminate Mikawa, disregarded these warnings. As Fumika was about to strike, Haruno grabbed her hand and proposed a plan to use Mikawa to raise enough money for Miku's medical expenses. Mikawa claimed he had lost his inspiration and could no longer write. Yet, faced with Haruno's determined gaze, he reluctantly agreed. Haruno found a solution for this situation. But what troubled Fumika the most was Miku, who remained unconscious. However, from now on, she was not alone in waiting for Miku to wake up. Alongside her were Takashiko and Natsuka, who were willing to accompany Fumika until Miku fully regained consciousness. Takashiko informed Fumika that talking to patients continuously could aid in her recovery. Consequently, Fumika began recounting everything she had experienced recently to Miku. Fumika's narration reminded Natsuka of her past life with Miku at school. During those days, Natsuka had noticed Miku often secluded in the infirmary, talking to herself. It was only now that she understood Miku must have been communicating with Fumika. Fumika disclosed that she had always wanted to help the introverted Miku make friends. However, her words left Takashiko bewildered, as he too was uncertain whether he had feelings for Fumika or Miku at that time. This 65-year-old grandmother possesses an enviable 15-year-old appearance. Her name is Senjo, just like Fumika, both serving as messengers of the underworld. However, having a teenage body makes her restless, causing sleepless nights. Senjo greatly envies her colleague Fumika because Fumika can gradually grow older with time, although both are messengers of the underworld from the afterlife. Senjo's body and appearance remain frozen at the moment of her death. Unlike Fumika, whose body continues to age like a human, this perplexes Senjo, as all messengers of the underworld are supposed to be individuals who have died once. It's not until Senjo encounters a girl in the hospital who looks exactly like Fumika that she realizes Fumika is actually a split personality of the comatose Miku. Even though Miku has been in a deep slumber for 4 years, Fumika cannot be considered deceased. Fumika undertakes the role of messenger of the underworld to protect Miku. Normally a workaholic, Fumika takes a complete turn this time. This is because her current assignment is related to Senjo, who remains completely unaware. Senjo even contemplates inviting Fumika on a trip, unaware that the usually work-driven Fumika surprisingly agrees. However, the destination is left to Fumika's discretion. Soon, the group sailed across the sea, heading towards a southern island. During this journey, Natsuka and Takashiko, after learning about Fumika's background, couldn't help but become particularly curious about Senjo's origins. Senjo didn't hide anything and casually mentioned that she had died in a car accident. In her account, the driver of the vehicle at that time was actually a boy. Although she omitted details about him, she proudly told everyone that they could ask her, who was an old grandmother, any questions they had about relationships between men and women. Fumika's destination was a distant uninhabited island. Nobody knew why Fumika insisted on going there. Meanwhile, another girl was also heading to that uninhabited island. Fumika also openly told others that on that island, besides the dead, there was nothing else. This made Natsuka, being human, start to feel a bit scared. However, in Fumika's view, the dead were very gentle. Natsuka, feeling a bit scared, took a step back, but accidentally fell down the stairs, colliding with the girl heading to the uninhabited island. The girl introduced herself as Susan. She had come to this uninhabited island to pay respects at a grave. Upon hearing her story, everyone began to admire Susan's courage. However, Susan was there because of a boy she had a crush on. She always lacked the courage to confess her feelings to him. It was only when she heard that paying respects at a grave could help improve one's love fortune that she mustered the courage to go to the uninhabited island to pay respects. Amid playful banter, the lovely night quickly passed. The next day, the group boarded a ship headed for the deserted island. However, they were curious about Susan's purpose. Susan explained that she was going to visit her grandfather's grave on the island, as her grandfather, Chisho, was once the owner of this deserted island. When Senjo heard the name Chisho, she seemed taken aback. It was a name she was all too familiar with. Yet she didn't inquire about Susan's grandfather. Upon reaching the island, Susan went to pay respects at her grandfather's grave. Senjo couldn't help but constantly gaze in the direction Susan had gone. At this moment, Senjo couldn't hold back any longer and confided in Fumika about her inner thoughts. Senjo, who had been deceased for 50 years, recently returned to the place where she grew up. However, everything from her childhood, including her home and school, had vanished without a trace. While Senjo understood that after 50 years, changes in her hometown were expected, she couldn't help but envy Fumika's ability to age gradually. Time had taken away her loved ones, friends, and lovers, leaving Senjo unchanged. Seeing Senjo feeling down, Fumika suggested accompanying her to visit Susan's grandfather's grave. They arrived at the grave site. Senjo approached the tombstone, greeting the long-lost loved one. It turned out that Susan's grandfather, Chisho, was Senjo's lover 50 years ago. Senjo looked at Chisho's granddaughter, now a grown woman, and she knew that Chisho must have lived a very happy life over these 50 years. With sincerity, Senjo prayed for Chisho. However, when she turned around, she saw a tombstone engraved with her own name and filled with words. She stood frozen in place. So, it turns out that Fumika's task this time was entrusted by Chisho, and the words on this tombstone are the Shigofumi he sent to Senjo. Susan was deeply puzzled by the sudden appearance of Senjo's name on her grandfather's tombstone, as Chisho had been single all his life. Susan's mother, a survivor of a car accident and orphaned, had been adopted by Chisho. In that moment, long-sealed memories flooded back into Senjo's heart. They had met while rescuing a cat, where Chisho's earnest and slightly foolish demeanor had always amused Senjo. That day, they agreed to come to this uninhabited island to play. An accidental physical contact led to subtle changes in their relationship. As they headed back home at the end of that journey, Chisho finally gathered the courage to confess his feelings to Senjo. But the next moment, an accident occurred. From that moment on, the two lovers were separated by life and death. And now, the contents of the Shigofumi left by Chisho on the tombstone are a marriage proposal to Senjo. He wants to say the words he couldn't say 50 years ago. Senjo, with tears in her eyes, mockingly asks him why there is no engagement ring. Despite her words, her hand reaches out. And so, Senjo left all her regrets and love on that memory-filled uninhabited island. During this journey, Susan also found the courage to bravely pursue love. Fumika, who completed her task, returned to Miku's side, awaiting Miku's awakening. However, on this day, while Fumika was carrying out her task, Miku unexpectedly woke up without any warning. This brought immense joy to her friends who had been anxiously waiting for him. But at this moment, Fumika, repeatedly, was wiping the handgun she often carried with her. This gun was the one Miku used to shoot his own father before falling into a coma. Yet now, Fumika had affixed postage stamps from the underworld on it. The reason Fumika did this was to have Miku use this gun to kill her after waking up.